Many viewers still recall the unexpected impact of a quiet 17-year-old stepping onto the Britain's Got Talent stage. But few knew that audition would mark the beginning of a long, transformative journey. Jonathan Antoine's rise began in 2012, when his initial appearance alongside Charlotte Giaconelli quickly turned into an international headline. Media outlets highlighted how a teenager who had struggled with confidence delivered a performance that immediately captured the judges' and public's attention. Reporters at the time noted how his operatic range contrasted sharply with the typical talent show roster, making him one of the most memorable performers of the season. Coverage expanded rapidly as the clip circulated across networks and social platforms, and analysts discussed how rare it was for a contestant of his age to receive that level of global traction overnight. The moment positioned him not just as a promising singer, but as a potential long-term figure in classical crossover music. While many talent show stars fade after the initial spotlight, early newsroom commentary already pointed toward lasting potential. Yet even then, questions began forming about how a young performer would adapt to sudden visibility, and what challenges might emerge in maintaining momentum beyond the initial wave of public fascination. Although the audition introduced Jonathan to the world, his musical development had already been shaped by years of early training and personal obstacles that reporters would later revisit as crucial context to his success. Coverage of his background emphasized that his voice did not appear suddenly. Instead, teachers and family members had nurtured his talent from childhood. Journalists began examining school records, choir involvement, and statements from vocal coaches who described him as unusually disciplined for his age. Reports also noted that he had faced social challenges, including bullying, which contributed to his withdrawn demeanor during public appearances. Experts in youth performance frequently cited his case when discussing the pressures young singers encounter, especially those whose artistic gift emerges before their self-confidence fully develops. News outlets also referenced his participation in local competitions and recitals, highlighting that these smaller stages had quietly prepared him for the far more demanding environment of national television. As interest continued to grow, commentators framed his early years as a reminder that even rapid success is often built on long periods of unseen effort. This contextual reporting helped audiences understand that his BGT moment wasn't an isolated event, but rather the result of foundational experiences that shaped both his technique and his resilience. Jonathan's performance on BGT became an instant headline, but subsequent reporting revealed that the attention brought intense pressure that was not immediately visible during the televised broadcasts. News coverage at the time focused heavily on the reaction from the judges, including remarks comparing him to established operatic figures, a comparison that carried significant weight in the classical community. As the episodes aired, journalists began exploring how rapid exposure affected him personally, particularly given his age and temperament. Analysts noted that while he and Charlotte finished as runners-up, their popularity eclipsed that of many winners from previous seasons, creating expectations that would require careful navigation. Commentators also began questioning whether the show's structure placed unusual emotional demands on teenage performers, and Jonathan was often cited as a primary example. Interviews published after the finale suggested he was still adapting to the public attention, even as the media continued to elevate him as a standout talent. This mixture of acclaim and scrutiny formed the basis for ongoing reporting about how early career visibility can accelerate opportunities while simultaneously amplifying stress, a dynamic that would influence the next phase of his career. The partnership between Jonathan and Charlotte initially appeared stable and successful, but newsroom analysis soon indicated that the duo's long-term trajectory was more complex than early reports suggested. After the show, the two secured a record deal and released albums that performed well within their genre, drawing positive reviews from classical and mainstream critics. Reporters covered their promotional tour, noting strong audience responses, but also subtle differences in artistic direction that surfaced during interviews. Industry analysts began discussing whether the classical crossover market could support a duo long-term, or whether individual branding would eventually become necessary. As these conversations circulated, statements from both singers hinted at evolving goals, and journalists started anticipating a possible professional shift. When the formal announcement of their separation arrived in 2014, coverage framed it as a strategic move rather than a conflict-driven departure. Reporters emphasized that the decision aligned with Jonathan's growing artistic identity and the increasing recognition of his vocal capability as a solo performer. This period is widely referenced in media retrospectives as the turning point that allowed him to define his career without the constraints of a partnership, setting the stage for his next major transformation. Once Jonathan stepped into the solo spotlight, reporters quickly noticed that his musical approach shifted, signaling a deliberate reinvention that would define his next chapter. Coverage of his solo debut focused on the maturity of his sound and the thematic cohesion of his first independent album. Critics emphasized that the project showcased artistic choices that differed from the duo era, reflecting a more personal interpretation of classical crossover music. As new albums followed, journalists began documenting his steadily increasing international presence, with reports highlighting tour, festival appearances, and collaborations that broadened his global appeal. Media commentary frequently pointed out that his audience demographics diversified, suggesting that his work resonated beyond traditional classical listeners. Analysts also discussed how digital distribution played a key role in amplifying his reach, allowing performances to gain traction in markets outside the UK. During this time, major outlets began identifying him as a leading figure in contemporary classical crossover, reinforcing his credibility as a solo artist. The narrative across most publications framed this stage as evidence of his adaptability, noting that he successfully transitioned from television talent to established professional in a competitive industry. While Jonathan's professional achievements continued rising, a separate storyline emerged in news reports focused on his personal challenges, revealing a deeper transformation than audiences initially realized. Media outlets produced extensive coverage on his discussions about confidence, mental wellness, and the effects of early criticism he experienced during his youth. Reporters frequently referenced interviews in which he spoke about navigating internal pressure and adjusting to the scrutiny that accompanies public careers. In later years, coverage expanded to include updates on his physical health, with publications documenting his weight loss journey and lifestyle changes. Journalists approached the topic with sensitivity, explaining how these developments were part of a broader effort to improve his overall well-being rather than merely aesthetic goals. Additional reporting covered his later revelation of a medical diagnosis, which provided insight into various challenges he had managed privately. Analysts noted that his transparency contributed to increased public support, as audiences appreciated his willingness to address personal matters openly. This segment of reporting is often cited as a pivotal moment when the narrative surrounding Jonathan shifted from a focus solely on his talent to a recognition of his resilience and growth as an individual. As recent reports show, Jonathan's career today reflects not just sustained success, but a clear evolution in how he approaches performance, public engagement, and long-term artistic direction. Current newsroom coverage highlights his mature vocal style, which critics say carries greater emotional depth compared to his earlier work. Reporters often analyze how his interpretations have broadened alongside his personal development, resulting in performances that feel more grounded and expressive. His ongoing projects, including recordings and live events, receive consistent attention from classical and entertainment media, who view his career as a rare example of a talent show alumnus maintaining relevance through steady artistic refinement. Analysts also emphasize his work with charitable organizations and his participation in awareness campaigns, noting that these efforts demonstrate a broader sense of purpose beyond entertainment. Interviews published in recent years depict him as thoughtful and measured, characteristics that contribute to his strong relationship with fans. More broadly, journalists suggest that his sustained visibility reflects an industry landscape increasingly open to diverse expressions of classical crossover music, with Jonathan positioned as one of its most recognizable figures. News reports now characterize Jonathan Antoine's glow-up as a multidimensional transformation, challenging earlier assumptions that his evolution was only physical or career-based. Across the last decade of coverage, a consistent theme has emerged. Jonathan's journey has been marked by resilience, strategic decision-making, and steady personal growth. Reporters reviewing his career arc emphasize that his development cannot be measured solely by his rise to fame or his visible transformation, but must also account for the choices he made to protect and strengthen his long-term well-being. Analysts frequently reference his ability to adapt to the pressures of the entertainment industry while preserving the authenticity that first drew audiences to him. This perspective reframes the familiar talent show narrative, presenting Jonathan not as a fleeting sensation, but as an artist who navigated early challenges and built a sustainable career through consistent work and self-awareness. As journalists continue to track his trajectory, the prevailing conclusion is that his story represents an ongoing evolution rather than a completed chapter, leaving room for further achievements and continued public interest.